Welcome back to CMO School. Today's episode is a little different. I'm doing a live coaching session with a listener named Deanna. Deanna has been in marketing for about 20 years and she's worked for global brands, but she made the leap into fractional CMO work and she immediately ran into the same roadblock I hear about all the time. How do you actually get clients as a fractional CMO? So she reached out to me in the DMs, and instead of just giving her a quick answer, I asked if she'd be open to letting me coach her right here on the podcast because I know so many of you are in the same spot. In this conversation, we dive into what she was doing wrong and the really quick and easy way I laid out for her to get her first few clients as a fractional CMO. So if you're ready to start or you're looking for better clients as a fractional CMO, this episode is going to give you clear step-by-step directions and hopefully help you avoid some of the mistakes that I see people make all the time. Let's get into it. Deanna, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so just to catch everybody up on what's happening today, where you came from, you reached out to me on Instagram in the DMs and you had a question about starting as a fractional CMO and how to get clients. And I've definitely been there and I loved your question. And it's a question I get a lot. And so I asked you, what would you feel about having me coach you on the podcast? So thank you so much for being here. I know that's not always easy to share in front of everyone else, but I think it's going to be great because you are definitely not the only person that has this challenge. And like I said, I get this question all the time. So I'm super excited to support you.
Yeah. Excited to have you support me.
Amazing. Okay. So for everybody else, tell us about your marketing background and experience. How long have you been a marketer? Give us a quick little rundown of your resume.
So I've been in marketing for about 20 years. I started in the advertising world in Toronto, basically as like a marketing extension to major multinational corporations, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, before moving client side and marketing for global brands, Emirates Airline, Monsanto, things of that nature. So really my background spans brand development, product marketing, media strategy, and expansion.
Amazing. And where are you at as far as your vision and goals right now for this next chapter of your career?
In terms of what I'm looking for right now, I need a part-time client.
Tell us a little bit about your client now. When you say full-time, are you working 40 hours a week for them?
Yeah.
What made you want to transition from the full-time employee to contractor role?
Flexibility and, owning my own business, being my own boss, bringing on more clients, obviously making more money.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are kind of the key things.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. All right. Well, we are going to focus our hour today on getting you this part-time client or filling that slot there and how to go about doing that. But I definitely think that the next step for you with the existing client and maybe chapter 2 of this conversation is looking at how can you kind of back yourself out a little bit of the role so that you have more bandwidth. Because often I find that when we are in a full-time role doing strategy or leading a team, truly there's only a portion of our work that is actually strategic that requires us to be at that kind of CMO or leadership level. And we end up, if we're full-time, hopping into a bunch of other stuff. So I'd love to see if we can figure out how do we get you there where you're still making the same pay, you still hold the same title, you're still fulfilling that role, but you have been able to delegate or pass off some of the things that are maybe more marketing manager-esque. Then you can free up some time. And that will be where you'll really get to a place where you can scale your income and not burn out, because 40 hours a week plus more is probably going to start to feel heavy really quickly. But we can chat about that another time. All right, let's walk through what you've tried so far to get clients.
Really just mostly LinkedIn, just leveraging LinkedIn, proactively reaching out to recruiters, connecting with past colleagues who themselves have transitioned into a fractional CMO type role. Connecting with net new folks on LinkedIn who have that title and kind of picking their brain, understanding their journey, how they get clients, and then really applying, quote unquote, actually sending out my resume to job postings on LinkedIn, companies who are looking for consultants or contract work.
Yeah.
And kind of the bulk of it.
Okay, amazing. And can you paint for me a vision of what would be the perfect scenario or the perfect client and sort of package? How do you imagine your role going with this new client?
Really like 1 to 2 part-time clients who require ongoing strategic guidance and or project implementation.
Okay. When you say implementation, just because everyone uses different words, do you mean like executing on the strategy you're putting together?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what they're looking for, I'm not opposed to saying no. I'm kind of at
Yeah.
that stage where I'll just say yes to everything.
Okay. Can I offer you some advice there?
Sure.
So, very early on when I started this company, I was also leaving corporate and I was kind of in this place of what do I want to do with my career? I don't even know what I like. And quite honestly, I was pretty burnt out too from corporate. And I was in a place where I was like, okay, do I even like marketing? What parts of marketing do I like? And at that point, I ended up taking on a whole bunch of different projects kind of on purpose. I had one client where I was doing their email marketing and social media, like actually the strategy and the content. I did a couple of brand projects, website projects, full marketing strategy projects, and really kind of dabbled. And I started to just really pay attention to, okay, what is lighting me up and what isn't. And I realized a couple things. So, number one was when I was doing any executional work, so whether it was like branding or social media content, anything like that, I really hit a ceiling pretty quickly with pricing that it was hard to surpass. There really is industry average for that. And I could see the future of, okay, I'm going to cap out pretty quickly here. And I also found that the places where I was the most lit up and the best days I had was when I was coming into businesses and really kind of auditing and analyzing what they were doing and putting strategy together. And at that point in time, I was saying to my husband and my friends, okay, I know I love marketing, but I love the strategy. And I think it's the actual granular execution, the doing part that I just kind of lose interest and it drains me. And it's not the part that really lights me up. So I got super clear on that. And I kept saying to them, like, I wonder, is there like a part-time marketing director? Can I do that? Is that a thing where people just need and want the strategy and leadership? And that is when I found the term fractional CMO. That was about 4 years ago. And at that time, there really wasn't a lot of fractional CMOs. There was some, but it was a lot more of a common term in the finance space, like a fractional CFO. And so I talked with a lot of people, even outside of marketing, just to get a sense of how does this work? What do you do when you work with clients? So that for me was, I guess, this testing ground phase, which I think sometimes you need to sort of figure out what you love. So I would say if you're in a place where you know you love strategy, we can kind of go one route. If you are kind of where I was, where you're like, oh, I don't know, I kind of want to play with both and see what lights me up, we could talk another route. So where would you say you're at?
Yeah, I'd say helping the companies with repositioning their brand, expanding into new markets, like that strategy piece for sure. I'm
Yeah.
finding that my sweet spot is really bridging the gap between the strategy and the execution, making the marketing look and sound good, but also kind of driving that revenue as well.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. That sounds exactly like what I loved and love and do with clients. So, one thing I will say is if you're going to position as a fractional CMO and if your goal is to have a handful of clients and be really maxing out your revenue that you can earn, you'll want to have some really clear boundaries around what is the fractional CMO role? What do you do and not do? Because when you start to get into execution, and I don't mean strategy execution, that's obviously something we would deliver as a CMO. But when you start to get into actually execution, if it's like, oh, I'll write this landing page copy or I'll create this social content, again, you're really going to cap out bandwidth wise and revenue wise very, very quickly. And certainly for you, even something more to be aware of, just given your current full time client, you're going to want to be super, super choosy what you do with the additional hours you take on, right? And really be maximizing that rate that you're getting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd say spending some time getting super clear around those boundaries. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. I make sure in any conversation and even all my sales and marketing materials that I'm clear about what the role is and isn't. And then there's lots of touch points I have through the sales process, everything from a client inquiring all the way through to a discovery call and sales call. There's lots of checkpoints where I'm making sure they have the right team or a budget to have an executional team and that they know what they're hiring. Because I find with the term fractional CMO or even any marketing role, you've probably seen this before throughout your career where a role will be called something and it can be completely different company to company to company. And so I really make sure when I'm selling a client, when I'm talking with a client, that number one, they need and they're ready for a fractional CMO. And then number two, that they're clear what I mean when I say I'm going to come in and be their fractional CMO. Because a lot of people will assume that you're going to come in and be kind of this one woman shop where you're doing strategy and you're doing all the execution. And so that's just something to keep in mind when you're getting to that place of conversations or even your own positioning online on LinkedIn or whatnot.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've said you've been applying to things on LinkedIn. I'll give you my thoughts on that. So, when I was starting, I dabbled and played with a whole bunch of different ways of getting clients. At one point in time, I did that as well, where I would be applying to roles that I felt looked like the skill set I was interested in. Like, okay, they're looking for someone to do this list of things. Like, that is what I would do as a fractional CMO. I wonder if I can talk them into that. Or, oh, they're looking for a contractor. Or sometimes, honestly, they were even looking for a fractional CMO. And I find most of the time, especially those ones that weren't looking for a fractional CMO, you get into just a conversation where not only are you competing against a bunch of other people, but you're also trying to sell them on the fractional CMO role. And they have a different idea in their head. If somebody comes to you or they know what a fractional CMO is or they know they want one, then your only job is to convince them that you're the right person for them versus the hurdle of I'm the right person. I found that was not super successful. I'm going to break down what really worked for me right at the beginning, how I got my very, very first clients, because I feel like that for me, getting the traction was kind of this snowball effect. I got the first clients and then it just kind of really took off from there. And I have other lead generation tools now, but I think when you're just starting and you're not trying to fill like 10 client spots, you just need a couple and that can be achieved pretty quickly and easily. So before I jump into my suggestions, any questions, any thoughts on what I've talked about so far?
No, I'm excited to hear what you're going to say.
Okay, amazing. So you and I have been chatting for a couple weeks, and when you and I were first connecting, I started to look for you online. So that was my number one tip was I could not find you online. I Googled you and I couldn't find you. Then I asked you for your LinkedIn and you sent this over. And my first initial impression of your LinkedIn was that you were sort of trying to be all things to all people. It just felt like you were trying to cast this really wide net, which can happen sometimes when you're applying for roles because you're like, oh, I should work this in and work that in. And then you end up kind of looking like, okay, well, I don't really know what she specializes in and what I should go to her for. And so you end up not looking like the best fit for someone. So what I would do is I would change the headline on LinkedIn. Right now, yours says marketing expert, B2B/B2C, strategy, brand growth, digital marketing, content development, social media marketing. It's a lot of things there. One is marketing expert feels not as strong as fractional CMO. Like if that's the route you want to pursue, I would lead with that, fractional CMO. That way you're attracting the people who know they want a CMO, which will make your sales process so much easier. And then I want to talk a little bit about your target audience so we can come back to that. But having B2B/B2C in here, it might as well say marketing for everyone. I struggled so much with niching and I could do a whole podcast on niching and unniching and all of that. It's really hard, but we can talk about that and kind of problem solve that area for you. And all the other keywords you have, like strategy, brand growth, digital marketing, versus if you're really clear in just fractional CMO for X, then there's no confusion about what you do. So I would clarify the headline and we can come back to who it's for in a minute here. And then I would rejig your about section to position you as a marketing leader, so fractional CMO, and really speak to the things that you have led and where you've driven. Like your intro on here was amazing. Even if it was a version of what you shared with me, you've got lots of experience. You have worked with some incredible brands. And because of that, when you work with people who haven't been in corporate, you're going to be bringing some special sauce that just doesn't exist in their business because of the amazing experience you have. So I think highlighting that, I would make it a little shorter because people don't read things. I do like that you have some keywords in there, so you can probably leave some of them. But I think I would just be strategic if you're really wanting to stay in that fractional CMO space. And then I would comb through all of your roles that you have listed. And with your DK consulting, when you have there, I would make that fractional CMO and founder or CEO or whatever you want to call your own firm. and then change your description below to address some of the things I've shared, because you do have B2B, B2C there, and you've got a lot of things listed. And I know it can be tempting to list those because for someone who doesn't know what a fractional CMO is or does, you're trying to say, we do it all. But I think it can just feel overwhelming. And then I think people will look at this and say, does she specialize in social, or is it PR, or is it, what is it? So talking about it in more of a high level way where you're saying, as a fractional CMO, I come in and I lead your team, I lead your strategy, and I make sure that marketing is driving results. And you can include some of the, I specialize in this, or here's some great results we've gotten in the past, just to give people a bit of a tangible something to kind of grab onto. But I think making it more digestible and easy to understand will really. And then I would do the same thing, kind of combing through your roles you have on there, trying to look at them through the lens of how might somebody who's hiring a CMO or looking for marketing leadership perceive all of this stuff? Am I highlighting the things they care about? Am I positioning myself in this role in the right way?
Right. Yeah. And I guess
Yeah.
that's kind of one of the challenges that I've run into so far is with the LinkedIn piece. So understanding how to position myself on LinkedIn as, both a fractional CMO and the director of marketing for the existing client. Because with the existing full-time client that I have, LinkedIn marketing is a key part of the business, and I'm very visible on that in that role. So I need to kind of represent that accordingly. I can't really kind of take away from that. But I do know at the same time, I need to position myself as a fractional CMO, as we're discussing here. So it's really, how do I position myself, I guess, as a dual role or with both positions without minimizing one or the other?
Yeah. I think if you are not able to change that to show fractional, that's okay. I think you can leave it as is. And then addressing the repositioning of the other pieces for your consulting side of things will really help. Really simplifying and being crystal clear, fractional CMO, and really keeping it at that and making sure that you're concise about what that means. That alone will help, because right now, just marketing communications consultant is in your job title for your consulting firm. And then you've got marketing expert and a whole bunch of other things in your title.
So with the two, the director of marketing position with my existing client and then fractional CMO with my core, would that confuse or deter potential client when they do look at my LinkedIn?
No, because every fractional CMO has multiple clients. So you don't have to get into the details of how much you work with the one client or what that looks like. It sounds like you have flexibility and agency within that role. So if you needed to hop on a meeting with a client's team or whatnot, and you can do that, then you don't need to share with them what that arrangement looks like. And it's very, very normal for fractional CMOs to have multiple roles active on their profile, because they usually will have a handful of clients. And if anything, it looks good because you already have a client, versus if it's a fractional CMO and they have no clients, that might be a deterrent or a bit of a red flag to somebody that you're reaching out to.
Right.
Yeah. So that I think will really help. Another thing is your vision for your consulting firm to expand it beyond you and make it sort of like a team or an agency arrangement eventually?
If it comes to that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You want to leave it open. Okay. Because there's pros and cons to having a company name not be your name. When I was starting, that was not on my radar. And so I was marketing by Jess, and everything was my name. And so it was really clear and memorable. But if you plan to potentially expand and have a bit of a team, maybe other fractional CMOs or other marketing implementers on your team, I do think having an agency umbrella name is nice. And you've already got that. So I would keep that. I would also change freelance. You have it set as freelance. I would set that as contractor, and then would do a really simple website. And I mean, very, very, very simple. When I started, I had a very, very short landing page that just had a blurb about my background, clear headline that I was a fractional CMO, what's different about working with me, and contact information or a button. And I think I might have had some FAQs about, what's a fractional CMO? What kind of clients do you work with? Blah, blah, blah. So I think that would really help. And again, I don't think you need to go crazy. I think you can just DIY it on Showit or Squarespace or something like that for now, just to have the presence, because that also will help kind of elevate you. It just shows this level of professionalism of, okay, she's a real person. She's got a website. She looks legit. And like I said, it almost doesn't matter what's on it. You just want to make sure the positioning is similar to what we talked about for LinkedIn, but it will just add that next level of professionalism to you when, someone's considering you against somebody else. So that will help as well. Lastly, what I really think will help you get some clients is actually super simple. So let's fast forward a few weeks. You've updated your LinkedIn. You've got a super simple landing page. And what I would love to see you do is build out a list of your entire network. I don't just mean the friendlies, I mean people you've worked with in the past, acquaintances, anybody who doesn't think poorly of you, essentially. Build it out, put everyone on there, comb through your phone, comb through your LinkedIn, think about past places you've worked, and build that out as a database for you. I did mine in Excel initially and tracked responses, dates I was reaching out, etc. Build that out, and I'll share with you after this. I have templates for outreach emails for reaching out to your network. And what you're going to do is you're going to divide these people up into two groups. So the first group is going to be the bigger group. Most of the people will fall into this group. They're in your network. You're just going to reach out and let them know what you're doing. And it's going to be really casual. It's not going to feel salesy or spammy or multi-level marketing vibes. It's going to be like, hey, hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great summer. Haven't seen you since blah, blah. I always add something kind of personal to it if I can. Or, hey, I saw you were doing blah, blah on LinkedIn. Anything you can do to show that you're a real human and you're actually emailing them personally, not copy pasting. And I would let that larger group of people know what you're doing. And I'll give you the template for this, but it's essentially like, hey, this is what I've been up to since we last connected. This is the kind of work I'm looking for. This is the kind of client that I serve. And I would really appreciate it if you know anyone that fits this, or if I come up and you think of me, that'd be great. So that's your first group. That's going to be super easy. You're not going to ask anything beyond that of them. Then you're going to have a part B of that list where you want to separate out anyone who is kind of a super connector or who is a potential higher value contact. So either they are connected in your industry, maybe they could potentially be a client, maybe they know someone who could be a client. For some reason, they're a little bit different than everybody else. And for those people, you're going to give them a shorter email saying what you're up to. Hey, can we grab a virtual coffee? I'd love to catch up. And so that gives you a chance to connect with them and build that relationship, share what you're doing on a call, and then also build a little bit more rapport. And I find with those kinds of calls, I often would end those with the person saying, oh yeah, okay, I'm so excited. I know this person. I'm going to introduce you to that person. Or, oh yeah, okay, I think you should talk to this person over here. And even if they are a super connector, but you don't quite think they would know the right people, definitely still reach out because they might introduce you to, I don't know, some other fractional CMO that knows whoever, and maybe they become a referral partner for you. So that would be my number one recommendation. And I will say follow up too. I don't think you need to do a ton of follow up with your network, but I would say 2 emails, a gentle nudge. Hey, just popping this to the top of your inbox. I know summer can be busy, really casual. I suspect from even just that, you'll probably land a client. That's how I landed my first probably 2 or 3 clients. And I will say when you're building out your list, try to really keep the net broad because I had referrals and clients come from places that I least expected. Like somebody I worked with for a few months and we kind of stayed in touch on social and that was it. And she happened to connect me to someone who was amazing. You almost need to have this shameless confidence when you're doing this work. I'm not going to feel annoying. I'm not going to be embarrassed about reaching out to people. I'm just going to do it and show up. And you'll be really surprised at the support you have. You'll get some surprising messages that will help affirm that you're doing the right thing. So that's number 1. And then number 2, I want to chat with you about your target audience. Do you have a niche? You've worked with some like great brands.
Yeah, there's no particular niche. To your point, I've worked across industries like aviation, agriculture, skincare, construction, mostly in the B2B sector, but I don't really have one particular niche, I guess you could say.
Is there an area that you love working in? Would you say you prefer B2B over B2C, or do you like both?
Both, but I'd say I've got most of my experience in B2B. I think I'm
Okay.
more comfortable there.
Okay. I would definitely do that. So that's niche part one, B2B. If you can narrow a little bit, you'd mentioned agriculture, construction. If you can narrow a little bit, I would try. And actually, before I go any further, what's your thoughts or what's your feelings when I tell you kind of to narrow down or niche down?
Uh, I'm listening.
I get it. I had such a varied background as well. And I felt like, I don't know if I can niche down. I didn't want to cut out anybody that could potentially be a good client for me. And I
Mm,
liked variety. That's my personality. I'm a manifesting generator. I love variety, I love learning new things. But I will say, I've kind of like played with it my whole career or my whole fractional CMO career the last 4 years. I started out quite broad. I said I'm fractional CMO for high growth direct to consumer brands. And then on my site or anywhere I was talking about companies I worked with, I talked about lifestyle brands, health and wellness. I sort of got a little more granular around what that meant because it wasn't any B2C. I wasn't doing like apps where we needed to grow by thousands of customers every month. And I didn't want that kind of client and didn't feel confident I could serve them. So I kind of narrowed that way. Then I was doing, at that point, I had a mix of e commerce clients and I had a lot of clients in the coaching and online entrepreneur space. And I was really loving that space. And I said, you know what? I want to go all in on this space and just see, can I A, become a deep expert here? And B, will this help me bring in clients? And so for the last 2 years, maybe even longer, I've niched down into that space where I work with creators and like course creators. They have programs or some sort of an online business where they're launching. And I will say that has really helped carve out a unique space for me and make me known as the person to go to for that, which has been really, really helpful. But I do think there is some room for exploring and seeing what works for you. And it's one of those things where you want to feel really sure about what you're deciding to do. And so if you need some time to dabble, dabble. But I do think it would be helpful for you to narrow down at the very least on B2B. And then
mhm,
you can say agriculture, construction, pop in those qualifiers. And also, one thing I will share when I was struggling with niching down, I was chatting with a coach of mine and I really loved her feedback because I can be very all or nothing, black and white thinker. And her name is Jess as well. And I was like, Jess, I don't want to niche. I'm so creative. I like doing all the things. And she's like, Jess, it doesn't have to be forever. And it doesn't even have to be overtly niching down. And it was such an interesting way for me to look at it. So, what I did at the time was I kept my positioning the same, where I said fractional CMO for high growth direct to consumer brands. So, I kept that the same. But in my mind, I said, okay, I'm going to really focus on brands who have memberships. And just doing that was actually such an unlock for me because then I had so many different ideas of how I could get in front of them. I started to look at who Kajabi has listed. I can see there's Kajabi groups I can join. There's Stu McLaren who leads memberships, and there's bigger people in there. It was such an unlock for me to go from anyone could be my client to, okay, no, if I just decide for 3 months to focus right now on membership clients, suddenly I'm having all these ideas of where I can find them. So
mm,
that might be something to consider too.
mhm. Yeah,
And
just
then,
use focus.
yeah, it can feel really overwhelming to be like, I don't even know where to start. Because the next thing I was going to tell you, as far as a step I'd love to see you take, is building out a list of ideal clients or dream clients. And I say dream, they don't even have to be dream. Quite honestly, my favorite clients and jobs, and I don't know if you feel this way, but have always been ones where people are like, who? What? And some of my least favorite have been the ones that are very, very well known. So when I say building out a potential client list, it doesn't have to be your, oh my God, my goal is whoever. Put those people on there. But if you narrow your focus, like I did with memberships, one of the things I did was I went on Kajabi's site and I looked through every single testimonial, every single case study. And I was like, oh, I wonder, does this person have a marketing leader? What's their brand like? And it started to just give me ideas of where I might be able to go to find a list or a group of that kind of person. And then I added that to my list. So I would try to build that list out to, I don't know, maybe like 100 for now, I think is a good start. And I'll share with you my outreach templates. There's lots of tips and training in my templates, but I always customize them and make it feel like really one on one outreach. So it does take some time, but that's how I got some of my biggest clients. Like Jenna Kutcher was one of my clients a few years ago. I reached out cold to her from building out a list like this. So it can be really, really successful, especially when you customize it and you talk about something specific to them. With Jenna, I had been listening to her podcast and I knew she was rebranding and repositioning and kind of going through some metamorphosis. So I brought that up in my pitch to her. And I also talked about me and like why I felt I would be a great marketing partner for her while she was going through that transition and some of the things that she said or done in the past that really resonated with me. So again, it can take time, but that is such a more effective route than applying to a position that's already open and has however many applications, and B, they already kind of have an idea of what they're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense for sure. And I guess just on the note of building out the list, what are your thoughts around SMBs or startups? To me, that kind of feels like the low hanging fruit. What are your thoughts?
I find there are fractional CMOs that specialize in the startup space. I find that a lot of times they don't have budget and they want you to work for a little bit of money and some equity, which for me, just out the gate, was not a yes for me. I'd been in the startup world early on in my career, and I know how rare it is for startups to actually make it. So for me to get that payout, unless it was something I was deeply invested in, it was just not something I was interested in. That being said, if you're interested in startups, I would go for ones who recently have gotten funding, which you can look on any of those websites that talk about so and so just got funding, and like that information is everywhere. And that can be a really great way to reach out and find potential leads that you can pitch yourself to. I found a lot of them were tech or SaaS based companies, which just wasn't really up my alley, but it just depends what you're interested in and what work you want to do. But that could work really well. And then SMBs, it really depends on the size and it depends how you want to structure yourself and your consulting agency. I would say, honestly, because you have a full time job, you are busy. I would not look at growing your firm right now with other people under you while you have a full time role. I would go for simplicity. I think you could have a couple of advisory clients, which can still be a very awesome revenue boost for you on a monthly basis and a really low amount of your time, which is great. So I would look for that. And the thing is, with smaller companies, small to medium sized companies, if you're in an advisory arrangement, you just want to make sure that they have the right team and they're qualified to actually work with you. Because I've worked with, on one hand, when you work with really, really small clients, they might not have anyone to execute on the things you're recommending. And they'll say, well, great, we don't have the budget or we don't have the team. And you kind of end up hitting a dead end with them because they don't have the resources. And then on the other side, sometimes there is small clients that I'll work with because I'll have those conversations with them. And I know that they do have budget to hire support, but they also need to have someone to manage all that because with a full time role, you're only really going to want to be making space for one or two advisory clients so you're not dying of overload.
Yeah.
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 I could go on and on. There's so much that goes into thinking through what qualifies a client to have a fractional CMO and what does that mean for you and your workload and what are the kind of things that can happen if you work with someone who's not set up properly. But that's kind of my quick answer.
Okay. Makes sense. Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So the last thing that I was thinking when I was looking at what you're doing is I think it'd be great to have some consistent content on LinkedIn so that you can start establishing your authority as a fractional CMO. And you have a full time job. So I don't think you have to go crazy. It doesn't have to be 7 days a week and multiple times a day. I think pick what works for you. If that ends up being 3 days a week, that's totally fine. I think just having a little bit of presence on there will really help when you're in this searching for clients mode. But that would be a last thing. I really think if we start with repositioning your LinkedIn, getting a really super simple landing page up and building out these lists. So kind of niching down in your head if you're not ready to do that overtly, building out that list and then building out your network list, sending all of those emails out. I would be so surprised if after doing all of that, you haven't already filled the 2 spots for yourself with advisory clients.
Perfect. I think those are very easy steps, very
Mhm.
tangible. I can definitely work with those and aim to get those done in the next 30 days.
Amazing. And send everything to me. I would love to see what your changes, where you're at, and keep me posted on results. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. I definitely feel more empowered and engaged after this conversation. So I really appreciate
Good.
your
Yeah. And I will say too, just as parting words, the lead generation and sales process for this role, it can be long, especially when you don't have traction. It can take time to get there. So I really think you'll probably have someone in the first month or two from doing this, but try to dig deep and find the resiliency in you, especially when it comes to outreach and follow ups, particularly too with potential leads. I think I followed up 6 or 7 times before Jenna Kutcher replied. And she was like, "Oh my God, Jess, thank you so much. I'm never on here. I'm so glad you followed up." It's cheesy, but it's that saying, the fortune's in the follow up. I really do believe that. And you have to just put that voice aside. They don't want to talk to you or you're being annoying. Set that aside and just be relentless and unapologetic and keep following up. And it will definitely happen for you.
perfect. Well, that I can do. So
Yeah, I love it. Good,
sure.
good. Well, thank you so much for just being vulnerable and coming on here, sharing your background and letting me live coach you. I think this is going to be really helpful for other fractional CMOs, other marketers that are listening. And I think a lot of people will really resonate with your story. So, yeah, thank you so much for doing that. And I can't wait to hear how things shift for you when you start implementing.
Yeah, I hope that this was helpful for other people as well. And again, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And I will keep you posted.
Amazing. Okay, so if you're listening to this and you want the email templates I mentioned, I will drop them in the show notes. So, if you're building a fractional CMO business and you don't want to waste years figuring it out the hard way, Fractional CMO School is open for enrollment and we'll give you the step-by-step roadmap that I used to build my business to 6 figures in 6 months and then $1 million per year with a small team of 2. There's expert coaching, one-on-one support, and whether you are an aspiring fractional CMO or you're growing, you're trying to figure out how to scale your team or do the role in a way that doesn't lead to burnout, it is a great fit for you. And you can learn more at thecmooffice.com. If you love this episode today, here is what I would love from you. Take 30 seconds to rate and review the show. It helps more marketers and CMOs find this content. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're going to implement any of this or you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out in my DMs on Instagram. I would love to support you. And thank you for listening. I will see you next week.